Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm going to go ahead and call to order our April 2024 meeting of the Davis Police Accountability Commission. I recognize that I think some of our commission colleagues are going to be running a little bit late today, and so we will welcome them as they come in. But given the amount that we have on our agenda today, I want to go ahead and get us started. And maybe just in terms of current roll call and making sure that microphones are working, can we just go from the end with Commissioner Myers,
Good evening, John Myers present.
Commissioner Sherman,
Here.
Commissioner Bliss?
I'm here.
All right, and myself, Chair Horton is here, and we'll wait on our remaining colleagues. I do think, as I think Kelly noted earlier, Vice Chair Griswold. Oh, Brian's here. Vice Chair Griswold will not be joining us today. She has a family obligation. All right, so let's see. Does anyone want to make a motion for approval of tonight's agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposed? All right, agenda approved. Brief announcements from staff. Kelly, take it away.
I don't think I have any announcements at the moment. So I come up with anything, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Any commissioner announcements? And here is Commissioner. I'm trying my best not to say trustee. Here's our Commissioner, Escamilla Greenwald. Just one more call for any commissioner announcements. Go ahead.
I don't know, Dylan, if this is,
Be sure your mic is on.
It's on.
Okay. Yeah. Just maybe bring it a little closer.
I don't know if this is where, at the point in the meeting where we want to talk about it, but we had an ongoing conversation about working with the Bicycle and Safety Commission. I attended their meeting last month, and I want to report to the to this commission, but I don't know if this is the time and is this a good time for it? Okay. Well, I attended the Bicycle and Safety, Traffic, etc. Commission meeting a few weeks ago, and told them that we had had a conversation in this commission about bicycle safety and our concerns as to two principal topics. One was, if you recall, whether we had sufficient law in Davis to ensure or to promote safety, particularly in the competition between bicycles and cars on the roads in town. And the other aspect of it being, if in fact we are satisfied with the law, are the police doing everything that we would like them to be doing to enforce it? And then a different topic really is with whom do we want to engage to talk about what measures can be taken to improve essentially the visibility of bicycles on the road. After as dark is approaching in the late afternoon in the winter and after dark. I had what I would say was a productive response. I spoke as a guest in the as a citizen guest coming in with a comment in the meeting. I was not on the agenda, so we didn't really have a discussion in the meeting, but prior to the meeting, I had a discussion with a representative from the city manager's office who was very interested in all of this. And then after the meeting, when I left, or after my portion of the meeting, after I made my comment and I left, Brett Lee, who is a member of the Bicycle and Traffic Safety Commission, followed me outside, called me from behind. I was surprised. I turned around and he stopped me to ask me a few questions, pretty much the answers to which I've already mentioned in this report. And he expressed that he was very interested in the subject. Specifically, he said it was a pet peeve of his and had been for some time, and that he, for one, would like to work with us. So at this point, I don't know what our procedural paths should be, but maybe a subcommittee of this commission to meet with a subcommittee of their commission and come back with some kind of recommendations.
Are you, I don't want to interrupt if you're still going. Are you finished or
I'm sorry?
are you finished with your comments or?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So when this item came up, when you brought it up during the long range calendar at 2 meetings ago, I believe, the commission acknowledged that was an important issue in the community, but not an issue under the purview of this commission. So you are welcome and encouraged, if you'd like, to continue to go to the BTSSC as an individual, and you can report back just as you did this evening. But this isn't an item that is under this particular commission's purview. So there is nothing that we would put on the agenda going forward relating to this.
So we cannot make it part of our business and appoint a subcommission to meet with people from the other commission, and
Correct.
we cannot do that. Is it?
Correct. It's bike safety is under the purview of a different commission, the BTSSC. You were at the right one, but it's not part of this
Okay.
So sorry if I'm sounding strong-handed, but I want to make sure everybody's really clear with that and that there's no confusion. So I don't know if there's anything else you want me to add to that, but.
So it seems like, as we were discussing at the February meeting, that this would be a good thing for us to, as individual commission members, work with our friends and colleagues on the Bicycle, Street Safety, and Transportation Commission, which I think is its title, and sort of work through that body, kind of as you've already begun to do. So I know I had didn't join you at that last commission meeting, but I definitely am similarly interested in the issue as an individual. So I think we can maybe continue to work through the other commission and try to, get the ball rolling down the field. I recognize 2 of our commissioners have just joined us. Any other commissioner announcements? I've been trying to myself utilize my own announcements to call attention to some of our monthly heritage observances. And so some of you who are friends with me or follow me on social media know that I want to be sure that we're acknowledging Arab American Heritage Month, which is the month of April, and a time for us to, uplift and acknowledge the contributions of Arab Americans in our community and Arab-speaking people. And so I just want to acknowledge that, as I did with Women's History Month last month and Black History Month the month before that. But happy Arab American Heritage Month for everyone here. I'm sorry, council liaison announcements. Any announcements? Okay, thank you. All right, so that moves us on to general public comment. And so this would be public comment on items that are not on our agenda, just something that you want to generally make the commission aware of. I know that there are some folks who perhaps are with us this evening for some of the items that are on our agenda, so this would be something different. Any folks looking to address us in general public comment this evening? Go ahead. You come up to the microphone here. You have 3 minutes, and please, you don't have to, but please introduce yourself at the beginning.
Hi, my name is Carol Joyce. I live in Davis. I've lived here 50 years. And I had a problem recently, and I just thought I would tell you. I'm not sure if I'm in the right place or what. But I live in a house, and in my backyard, which is private, nobody can see it, is a tea house. And in the tea house, a friend of mine who is homeless has stacked some of her plastic buckets. And in the buckets are her, treasures. But it's in my backyard and nobody can see it. But like at the end of the row, I had something that was to save my life. It's a CPAP machine. I have sleep apnea. I need it. The policeman was sitting there and I went up to him. I got on my knees. I said, I need this so badly. Please don't throw it away. I begged him. I said, this is what's going to save my life. If I don't have it, I could die. It's the truth. Well, he didn't do shit. I mean, I'm sorry. He pushed it down the road to, I mean, there was a little slope, and he gave it a little punch, and it rolled into a place where it would be safe. And it makes me really sad because I need it. And I begged him, and he said, well, you can buy another one. They're extremely expensive. I don't know what, but okay, I don't know what you can do, but I did my best to let you know. Is there anything you want to ask of me, or?
We can't get into too much of a
Oh.
back and forth, but thank you for sharing that with us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other folks looking to address us in general public comment? All right, so we'll go ahead and move forward into our consent calendar. Anyone want to make a motion for approving the minutes from the March meeting?
So moved.
We'll give that to Cecilia, and then second from Robert. Any discussion? All those in favor? Please say aye. I'm sorry.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. All right. Moving on to our police auditor update. And I feel like one of our folks in the audience may have let you know, but we do have our independent police auditor, which you're going to hear from for a moment. If you wanted to, ma'am, file a complaint with that incident that you had, Mike, this guy here will be the person that you would file it with. We can get you email and contact information for him if you want that. But Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Chair Horton. Yes, of course, I am able to talk with folks that want to learn more about the possibility of options with regard to concerns about for the performance of the Davis Police Department. That's one of my roles, and I'm available to do that. Considering the size of the agenda and the other items on your list today, I'm going to be relatively brief. I'm going to talk about just an update of where we are with the hiring and long promised hiring and recruiting audit that we did. We have made progress. We had a number of conversations with Chief Pytel, and we have gotten to a consensus with regard to that audit as a result of that back and forthing. The audit draft then went to the next step, which is to the Office of the City Manager, as well as the City Attorney. That was sent out last week, but have not received any feedback from either entity. Once we do and we get everyone on the same page, the report will then be available for initial release to council and eventual release to the commission. So that's where we are with the report. Sorry we couldn't quite get it out in time for this session, but I definitely think that we are very close to being in a position where we can release that report. And that concludes my remarks. Of course, available and answer any questions about that or anything else impacting the police department and my role as the IPA.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike on his report?
I have something. There was an item in the news about a month ago that, and I don't remember the details, but essentially it was a circumstance involving the police where there was some kind of complaint being made by a merchant. It might have had to do with missing merchandise, something of that kind. And apparently the police, and I'm not sure if I'm really vague on this, but I was hoping Mike might be able to fill in a little bit. It had something to do with a citizen being authorized by the police to make a search of a suspect's vehicle. And it just struck me as being a very odd thing, and I wondered, Mike, if you knew anything about this, or if there was any precedent or explanation for that kind of an activity, if it's proper, if it's legal.
Sure, Commissioner Sherman, I'd be happy to talk with you offline about this if you'd like. I'm a little reticent about getting into the substantive legal niceties here since it's not an agendized item. But I can tell you that in a general, and I have no idea what this particular case was all about. I can tell you in a general way that there are times in which private citizens are asked to assist the police when going through inventory of potential stolen items. That search is not a search that's conducted by civilians, but if a civilian is in a position to help the police identify potential stolen items, there are no barriers to that kind of assistance. But of course, every case turns on its own facts. So if there was interest in further looking into this particular incident, either, the PAC has a number of options of doing that. Once it's agendized, you could ask me to look into it. You could ask the chief for a response. There are a number of options that are available. And I'm going to have to be careful and end any further discussion at this point, Commissioner Sherman.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mike?
I have one other, if I may. Another news item that caught my attention, and I wondered, was the district attorney in Yolo County holding what appeared to be a public event where he and Chief Pytel and some other interested parties announced that merchants would be encouraged to call the district attorney's office directly if they suspected or observed shoplifting. And there seemed also to be some implication that the public was being encouraged also to contact the DA directly. And I found that puzzling. And again, my question is similar to the other case. Is there precedent for this? Is it proper? Is it real? I just don't know where to put it in the context of police activity.
Again, without getting too much into the details, I can talk in a general way about my experience and the setup in California with regard to peace officer responsibilities and jurisdiction. In the state of California, the district attorney has jurisdiction to investigate crimes in the same way that any police officer would for a city police department. It's called concurrent jurisdiction. The district attorney has a number of investigators who are fully fledged peace officers and have the ability to enforce the laws throughout this county of Yolo County and even outside of Yolo County in some circumstances. And so on its face, I don't see any issue with regard to Yolo County starting an initiative where they assign investigators to assist with regard to merchant theft, either outside the city of Davis or within the city of Davis, since they have jurisdiction to do so. And I think I'm afraid I'm going to have to end my comments about that item at this point without getting into the weeds of an item that's not agendized.
Thanks, Mike.
Any other questions for Mike? Then I'll go ahead and take it to public comment. Any public comment on the independent police auditor's report? All right, then we'll bring it back to the commission. Any final questions or comments? All right, very concise colloquy on the police auditor update. Okay, now moving on to our regular items, our much awaited surveillance technology review in item 7A. I think last year we, instead of going through each particular technology bit, which, as longtime members of this commission know, there's often no news on, a number of the technology items. I think if I recall correctly, what we did last year, as we engaged in this, is we, just said if there were bits of technology that commission members wanted to pull out specifically or had concerns or questions about, we could sort of, go through that rather than sort of going item by item. Yeah, it's possible. However we want to proceed. I was just sort of bringing up what I recalled from what I thought I remembered the last time. But does anyone, Kelly, did you have something?
So you have a couple of options here. If you are prepared to have a full discussion on the item this evening at this meeting, you can do that, certainly. If you want to do more of what you did last year, you can appoint a subcommittee to look into the specifics and kind of do a deeper dive, and then come back at the next meeting and have that conversation. This won't go to the council until, I believe, June. Did I say May? Whatever I said in the thing, so May. But I think that you've got your May meeting that you could have additional conversation should you so choose. So I guess that's it. You can figure out how you best want to do it. If you decide that you want to continue a fuller conversation to the next meeting, then what's super helpful is for this meeting, if there are specific questions, confusion, additional information you want, anything like that, if you're able to share that one way or another, sharing that tonight is helpful. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through the table. Certainly haven't read the full text of it, but I have a series of questions. Yeah, no, I have not read the whole thing. Thank you, Kelly, for putting together the table again. So maybe we could go through those questions, or at least I could voice them and then move from there.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. And then we can maybe sort of come back in May for any sort of final questions and comments that folks had. Take it away.
Can I add one more thing? I wanted to look and see, I have to go back and see what I put in the staff report, but the council will be hearing the annual renewals at their June 4th meeting. So you do have the May meeting in addition to talk about it, should you want. That was the reason that we tried to move it up, because the commission wanted, some additional talking time about it.
Thank you. Want to share your questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, every year we see this Accurate Virtual Crime Center come up, and Kelly's notation is that the system was used, the queried results were used for information gathering to support ongoing investigations. I'm always curious how many investigations. Maybe the better way of thinking about this is some sort of computerized information system that they share with other systems, is to ask how many times did they use it? And my hunch is many, but I would like to at least get some feedback from them about it. Also, in the second item, body worn cameras, the word expected is used. And I did not go and look in the policy, so I don't know if that's taken directly from the policy or not. But are there times when body worn cameras are required to be used? I was thinking that there were, but I could be mistaken about that.
Robert, can I just
Yeah,
jump in
Mary,
here?
please.
On your first question,
Yeah.
when you were interested in knowing the amount, they say also that other agencies can query. So would we know even how many times they queried us?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's worth asking. Do they keep a log, for instance, of how many times they open that system and use it, and how many times they've been asked for information from other agencies? That might be interesting. I mean, I'm not sure that the depth and level of information that they're being asked. I've never seen a screen or screenshots of anything of the system, but I was just curious because I bet they use it a lot.
Well, and my question is, what are we exactly wanting? Are we wanting how many times our department
Yes.
queried it
That's,
versus how many times others queried it?
well, my first question is, do they keep a log? You know, when they open it up and use it, is it get tagged and do they keep track of how often they use it? I mean, if they're not using it and they're paying money to subscribe to it, is it worth the money for one thing? But if it's a valuable tool, I think that it's worth knowing how much they're using, we are using. And then if it's something they share with other agencies, how many times are they querying us about it?
I just want to be specific
Yeah.
on what we're asking.
No, that's good. Thank you.
As far as your other one, I thought they were required also versus
Yeah,
than expected, so.
that can probably be easily answered looking in the policy. On the item about Celebrite. So if you look on the far right on the Celebrite under replacement requests, staff is requesting a add-on program called, I don't know how to say these, who makes these names up? They're like pharmaceutical names. Insayets, which searches cloud-based storage on devices. Cloud-based storage. So my phone and my computer and my laptop and my phone share information in the cloud. How can the system determine which comes from which? Do I want them rooting around in my cloud documents as opposed to my iPad or my iPhone documents? So I'm curious about how this system works, and because cloud storage is, it's a big business, obviously, but a lot of people use it, and they use it for lots of different purposes, and all their information gets commingled. And so I'm curious how they would determine that it was just on the phone, or are they allowed to go rooting around in people's iCloud files? So that's a question I have about that one. Has anyone ever seen the output of the automated license plate readers to see what it looks like?
What do you mean by output?
So they record license plates as they are doodling around town, and that's the ALPR. I'm sure that data is kept, right?
I mean, like sort of for what you were talking about with the database, like how many times we're using it, or?
I'm curious what they see on it, because it's, you know, this is a question in some jurisdictions about, well, we're talking about facial recognition, and ALPR is something that comes up in discussions about facial recognition. And I know that we only use it in this town for parking, but what do they see? I was curious if we could see, maybe just get some screenshots of what the parking meter guy gets. I mean, he's up and down my street 10 times a day.
Are
But
you
that's-
concerned that it's something greater than just the license plate itself?
Well, I'm just curious if it, yeah, I mean, does it take pictures of
Right.
the whole back of the car? What if somebody's standing there trying to screw off the license plate? I don't know, you know,
Yeah.
what's it look like? That's all I was interested in.
They described it as including an infrared image along with a conventional digital
Right.
image.
Right.
And I think that implies that they want to be able to see the detail from some distance on certain circumstances. Because of the variation in lighting, there are times of the day, various weather,
Yeah.
where infrared photography will show details not seen otherwise.
Right.
I think it's an interesting question, but I really would be surprised if they had any interest in seeing anything more than the license
Well,
plate in that
Yeah.
circumstance.
Okay.
But you may be onto something.
Well, I don't know. I mean, okay. My last question had to do with the remote public safety cameras. I noticed that one of them is now down. So there's only one operating, and there's quite a bit of detail about criminal investigations that, in fact, hit and runs and carjackings that were observed using these cameras. And I was in the Marketplace Shopping Center 10 days ago, and there are two very large surveillance cameras right in the middle of the shopping center. Obviously owned by the shopping center. And I'm just curious about the kinds of agreements that the police have with merchants about the use of footage from these. And, you know, Target's been a target lately of a lot of retail theft, and I haven't noticed any of the cameras on the parking lot down there. But I'm wondering if the police department has to have an agreement with the developers or whoever owns those properties to access their the footage, the video footage. I'm sure the merchants are happy to have them see it, but I'm just curious if there's some sort of agreement between the police and to get that information.
This was certainly a question that I had. I think we discussed this when we were talking about the May stabbings. It seemed like what was the relationship between the department and non or third party folks in terms of
Right. And
surveillance?
I've heard the chief say that they do access things, including things like doorbell cameras and stuff like that.
So I guess my question is, your first question seemed more about the usage of, because I think our job is to see whether that's being used appropriately and whether we recommend continued use or not. Some of these other ones you're asking about sound more that you're just interested in learning more about it versus it.
I'm interested in learning how the police go about doing their business and whether it should be, whether they're doing it openly and transparently, and whether the policies that they have written cover everything they do. That's basically where my questions are coming from.
Okay. 'Cause-
And sure, I'm curious about how this.
No, I mean, some of
But
it
you're right.
seems great. It's nice to know, but I'm not sure we need it to make.
Well,
some
I'm
of
not
that.
sure we need all.
So,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these questions came to mind as I was also thinking about the face recognition and surveillance in general, how it's used, that sort of thing.
Mr. Chair, I have a question when it's,
Please go ahead.
so, Robert, apropos of your point about the policy on body worn cameras, just briefly looking at it, on page 3, we find terms officers are expected, body worn cameras shall wear, will inspect, must be activated, are expected. I wonder if this is just a inconsistency in drafting issue that we could simply ask the chief, are these terms synonymous, or and just leave it at that? And is expected mean it's the rule, they got to do it? Or because there's some inconsistency in their terms. I'm just not sure why there is that.
That's helpful. And I admit I should have gone and read the policy.
Any other questions that we want to bring to light? Go
So
ahead.
just for purposes of clarification, so it'll be on our May agenda, correct? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, up to the commission. You can do whatever you want to do this evening related to it. You also have another bite at the apple in May, and it goes to the council in June. So we would want to make sure that all of the input that you wanted to provide was included at your by your May meeting, so that we could have it all ready to go to the council by June.
So do we need a motion for that then? Do we need a motion to,
You don't need a motion to bring it back to the next meeting. You would need, if you wanted to provide any homework assignments to anybody tonight, you would need to do that, but
I'd like to give you a homework assignment by asking you to find out that if the terminology is consistent in the body worn camera.
yeah, I have the question. So all of the questions that have been asked so far, I've made note of those, and we'll have some sort of response to those questions by the next meeting. I guess I would ask if you have other questions that come to you 3 o'clock in the morning or whenever you think of them, if you can forward those to me as well, so that we can get any questions that you might have included. We can certainly do that. We can either leave it there, or you guys can continue to discuss and however you want to handle it.
other things, I think it's really important, particularly because we're going to hopefully get some of this information back at the next meeting to try to get as many of our sort of substantive, what is this? Why does this look this way? Sort of questions out at this meeting. So any more of those kind of things, we're just looking for clarification, more information about how something is used. If not, then we'll go ahead and take it to public comment. I think we haven't done that yet. Public comment, anyone want to address us on the surveillance technology review of 2024? Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Wasn't planning to speak on this item, but I could save you guys some hassle. Brian Hofer, Executive Director of Secure Justice, and I've administered a similar ordinance like yours in Oakland. And as the nation's foremost nerd, I appreciate your questions on this. Cellbrite, the tech does know the difference between a cloud search and a phone search. It'll tell you where the data source is coming from. And perhaps more importantly, from a civil liberties protection perspective, the warrant must be specific. You cannot search my phone for my cloud's Dropbox. The warrant must authorize that. That's a really big deal. ALPR can absolutely pick up people, bumper stickers that might reveal political affiliations, color, make, and model, whether there's dents, gashes in the paint, house residential numbers, other road signs with numbers. The older generations were up to a 35% error rate. It's getting better, but it's still probably about 10%, double digits. So anything with numbers can also lead to a bad scan. I think it was Commissioner Bliss, if I understood the comment you were making to your colleague, it's the standard under the ordinance isn't just, is the use appropriate? The standard is really, do the benefits of using the technology outweigh the costs? And the costs are to civil liberties, of course, like how invasive is it? And secondarily to the taxpayer. Some technology, and I'm a little different than certain activists, I don't think some technology is all that invasive, but I know from my firsthand research, it's also not very effective. So maybe I might have a financial gripe, whereas I don't have a civil liberties gripe, but that's the standard to meet under your surveillance ordinance for ongoing use, is that the benefits. And I noticed, one of your categories, it's supposed to supply information, crime statistics about efficacy. Looking at that language, I'd, argue it's a little thin. Keeping in mind, you guys were one of the first back in 2018 to adopt this. The model has evolved quite a bit, partly just to make it more clear. Some of the original ACLU language was a little vague and ambiguous as to what was actually being demanded. And so some of the amendments we've made in later jurisdictions have just kind of helped clarify. It's like, well, what does information mean? So that's pretty broad. So you guys are a little bit, you could use some refinement in your model, I guess is what I'm trying to say, but just wanted to answer those. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other, welcome.
Hi, I'm Francesca Wright, and I'd like to build on what Brian said, and also the question that Robert Canning asked about. So how have we benefited from these technologies? And I've always said, why not have just a little simple table per technology? How many times was it used? How many convictions were a result of the data that was generated? I don't think it has to be complicated. I think, in fact, the least complicated it is, the better. Just really simply quantifying the benefits. And I found that over the years since we've gotten the reports, we get many pages, but we don't really get a lot of the specifics of the benefits. And I don't know how that's negotiated with this commission. When I've worked with other commissions, they have their external evaluator, or maybe their auditor comes up with just a real simple table. And I'm sure that other communities, and if we can connect with these communities that have commissions, we might be able to come up with something that is way easier for the police department to generate and way is easier for the public to understand. So I can't say I know the mechanism for you to get there because, you know, I would consult somebody who understands data, but perhaps you can work with your auditor on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on this item? Just to, address at least part of Brian and Francesca's comment, I think that obviously this has been a evolving sort of system, how we get these reports, the timing of them, what's in them. It's been something that we've tried to tweak and offer feedback on really since the first surveillance technology annual report. And so there is certainly a whole lot of room for improvement in terms of making this something that the department can produce in a simpler fashion and something that by that I mean the commission, but also we as a public can digest and sort of make determinations about what's in that report a lot more effectively. So let's we had some good suggestions from YOLO People Power and Robert over our course of the history since 2018. So let's keep the ball rolling toward in that direction. Do we want to I see your hand. Do we want to do a subcommittee? Just wanted to check. That's one of the things that I wanted to check on.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was going to make a suggestion that we make a motion that we establish a subcommittee because it's just, there's so much info to come back so that way we could discuss it at the next meeting and have a report forwarded to council.
Yes. Any volunteers for that committee?
Yeah, I'll be glad to volunteer.
All right. We have a spot for one more if someone wants to. They don't have to.
Sorry, I missed who the second one person was.
Oh, Robert and Cecilia.
Thank you.
I don't know if I have the time right now. So yeah, if no one else, then it'll be Commissioner Canning and Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald on that subcommittee. Robert, did you have something separate?
I forgot what it was.
If it comes to you in the next little while, bring it up. Any further comments, actions, discussion, questions on this item? So I will open public comment again on this item. I will just advise folks that we generally only do that once per agenda item. So try to come up, when everyone else is, but I welcome you.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name's Natalie. I did have a few questions about the surveillance technology annual review. I was wondering if it could be accessible in other languages, maybe not necessarily like the entire report, but maybe like a summary table would be helpful, especially for our Spanish speaking community here in Davis. And then I was also wondering for I think it was one of the cameras, replacement cameras that was like above $12,000. I was wondering if they could include like why they needed it to be replaced. Just a question that I had. Yeah.
Thank you. While we're here, any other public comment on this item? Okay. Did that come to your memory? Oh, great.
Yeah, it did. One of the proposals we had a while back about this review process was to spread it out over the year rather than do it all at once. There are how many different technologies, Kelly? A dozen? 8, 9? One a month? Something like that. I'm thinking not only of us, but also maybe, I don't know how the police put this together or staff, you included, Kelly, put this together, but having it all at once can be onerous. Splitting it up, every month might be a little easier. I don't know. Maybe we could get some input from the police department who are sort of in charge of putting this all together. A lot of it's boilerplate anyway, because the policies don't change that much. But maybe it's a question we could ask the chief if it might be easier workload wise to do it spread out over the year. I don't know how that would impact the council, as the council has to take it all together, according to the ordinance, once a year. But there's a lot of material here. So that was just something we had brought up once before. So I wanted to bring it up again.
Thank you. Let's see. Oh, question, Kelly, about language, language accessibility. What's the process for something like that?
I have to check based on how this is posted on our website, but generally what we do when we have information and post it on our website, there is an option there to translate into, it's Google Translate into many different languages. And so that is generally how we make sure that there is accessibility in whatever language somebody is choosing to look at. What I don't know for certain is the way that we have this posted right now, just as a PDF, if that works.
Could we perhaps put forward a request as a commission that perhaps this table, I know that the very lengthy report would probably be not ideal or less than feasible. But is it possible that we could put in a request that this table that we're all looking at on the screen be translated or made available in the manner that you were describing?
Yes, I'm sorry, nodding my head.
Thank you. Okay. Any other things on the surveillance technology annual review?
I have one question. Kelly, so the police department is requesting the approval, to purchase a replacement camera at the cost of $12,547.67. I think the member of the public may have been referring to that one. It does say that the camera is essentially the same as the one that is being replaced, and they're going to use existing police department budget to cover the cost of that. So they're asking if that's all right. Will that then put them in a position to have no backup funds for that I was going to say when and if, but eventually it'll go out if they get the okay. Eventually this one will go out, so then they'll have to come back for another 12,500, or whatever the cost is at that time. Because that wouldn't come out of another budget of theirs, is that correct? Or can you find out?
I can certainly find out. Usually what we do is we have, for pieces of equipment that are over a certain a cost, we have a replacement fund. And so every year you have to put a little bit toward that fund based on the useful life or the expected life of that particular piece of equipment. So if that is the case with this particular piece of equipment, which I do not know, but it would be typical, then we would have funds that we set aside specifically for that purpose, or, a purpose very similar to it. Is that answering your question, or? Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll find out a little bit more on that one.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. So we'll go ahead and go forward into item 7B, our continuation of the facial recognition technology discussion. Kelly, can you go ahead and bring up the the committee report, the PDF? And I'll try to walk through what my expectation is for what the process is going to be. As a member of the committee, I'm going to just basically read through this report to give y'all a summary of what we did when we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald, I think, is going to perhaps read from some of the emails that we received. I recognize that, we get emails and then y'all as the folks in the public don't really get access to that. And so there's a couple of emails that I thought maybe we want to draw our attention to. Commissioner Myers was on the subcommittee with us, but arrived at a different conclusion than Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald and myself did. So I want to give him an opportunity to walk through those thoughts, and then I'll probably want to come back and offer some of my counter thoughts, and then we'll proceed forward as we usually do, public comment, and then bring it back to the commission for a fuller discussion. So we did have the committee meeting. It was myself, Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald, and Commissioner Myers. That was on March 22nd. To discuss the virtues of pursuing a ban on the use of such technology by the City of Davis government, particularly the Davis Police Department. The committee consisted, as I said, of the three of us. The full commission held two preliminary discussions at our February 2024 and March 2024 meeting, inviting Brian, who's here with us again this evening, from Secure Justice, to make a presentation at that March meeting. The committee considered a draft ordinance banning the use of facial recognition technology for Davis. That draft is available for the full commission's consideration this evening. While this is not unprecedented, it is important to note that not all of the 3 committee members achieved consensus on this topic. Chair Horton, Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald supported the full commission recommending the draft ordinance to the Davis City Council, while Commissioner Myers did not support banning the use of facial recognition technology or the draft ordinance. Myself and Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald remain convinced that the reliability concerns with this technology present too great a risk to the fair pursuit of justice in our community. If the technology is only reliable for cisgendered heterosexual white men, then it is simply isn't fit for law enforcement use. It's perhaps this wide array of reliability concerns for people of color, women, and gender nonconforming individuals that has led the Davis Police Department to never request this technology from the Davis City Council. The fact that we as a city have never used this technology puts us in a perfect position to protect the integrity of our policing, bring our community's values into legislation, and ban the use of this harmful and discriminatory technology for the city of Davis. So that's just sort of where we arrived at as a committee, 2 of us sort of in the same position and 1 of us in a different position. Cecilia, do you want to read from some of the emails that we received?
Yeah, I can. Is that okay, Kelly, to do that?
Could we hear from John before we go to the emails?
Yeah, sure.
If Commissioner Meyer wants to.
Oh.
Commissioner Meyer wants to present his, because you sent something out, John, that I appreciated, and I'm just curious if you wanted to present that along with the majority report, so to speak.
I'm happy to do that whenever that's appropriate.
Go ahead.
So I did look at the proposed ordinance, and I'm troubled by some aspects, not all aspects of it. If you look at proposed section 2.68.030, it would prohibit any employee of the city of Davis, but the focus is on the police department, I realize, from obtaining, retaining, requesting, accessing, or using any face recognition technology or any information obtained from face recognition technology, which I read, and my reading could be incorrect, to say that Davis PD could not use facial recognition information generated by any other law enforcement agency anywhere in the world, I suppose, for any purpose when conducting a criminal investigation in Davis. This is very troubling to me, since it is clear that when we balance the pros and cons of this, which is the correct way to do it, that there is plenty of evidence that facial recognition technology is used all the time to solve serious crimes. The Capitol rioters on January 6th, many of them were identified with facial recognition technology. I just looked online today. You can find many examples. I realize anecdotes are not evidence, but anecdotes can be powerful. If you look at, I just was checking something called the Independent Women's Forum, talked about a case in which facial recognition technology aided in the rescue of a teenager who was abducted from a sporting event and sexually trafficked. If you look at an article from August 9, 2023 in Forbes magazine, it identifies facial recognition technology as useful in protecting children from sexual exploitation. So to me, the thing that bothers me the most is that you're completely, with this proposal, cutting off the ability of the Davis Police Department to use any lead generated by any agency, federal, state, or local, from protecting children, protecting victims of serious crime under any circumstances. This sort of draconian all or nothing, and we're going for all ban, will, I believe, interfere with the ability to safeguard children and victims of domestic violence and other crimes. I would fully support an ordinance that says the Davis Police Department shall not, until further permission is granted by the City Council, obtain its own facial recognition technology. I'm completely comfortable with doing that. Apparently, the police department doesn't even want it. So I'm comfortable with doing that. But I'm afraid to say literally throw the baby out with the bathwater by banning any use by our police department of any lead generated by any agency anywhere in the world to keep a victim of crime safe or to rescue that person is, to me, not a good use of the legislative process. And so I would oppose this in its current form.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. I did, like I said, I did want to go through those emails, but now that we've sort of gotten into that, I do want to walk through at least what some of my responses to some of those, at least the ones that I could predict that were here in the document that you prepared for us, Commissioner Myers. So, I mean, I just want to say that, you know, you referenced the legislative process and the proper use of that. As somebody who's, you know, been a reform activist for all of my adult life, I don't know, I kind of thrown off balance by, you know, we proposed this ban, and I think what the response that we got essentially, you know, immediately was, no, I don't support this. This is bad policy. I'm used to, you know, there's very clearly a discrimination concern here that myself, you know, just speaking for myself and Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald is, you know, a high concern. And I really didn't see any effort to kind of mitigate that, you know, in the response from, you know, Commissioner Myers on this particular topic. And so it's hard for me to figure out where to, did you have a?
Go ahead and finish.
Okay, it's hard for me to figure out sort of where to sort of take that that concern, excuse me. So, you know, I just want to start here in your bullet point number 2 in concerns with wording. You referenced that just now in your comments that in your reading that, you know, the DPD would not be able to use facial recognition based or based information in any of its crime fighting. And, you know, I think that is, I'm not a lawyer. I defer to your knowledge there, but that's my reading as well. And I think that's, again, you know, if we understand that this is a discriminatory technology, it wouldn't suddenly become non-discriminatory if it's used by a PD outside of Davis. If it's used by my hometown police department, LAPD, it doesn't suddenly become non-discriminatory as a technology because we're using it third-party Davis from LAPD. So yes, that's my reading as well, and I think that would be correct given, again, the performance of this technology both in the field in the context of law enforcement and in the lab setting as well. In your section titled "It's Unwise to Ban All Use of Facial Recognition Technology," you have a passage that reads, "I'm sure supporters of the proposed ordinance will support their arguments with anecdotes." You know, the cold hard, you know, I'm a person from Texas. I use anecdotes to drive my arguments a lot. Anecdotes are not necessary to drive forward this argument. The technology, the facts of the technology make it clear and plain that this is discriminatory. The anecdotes are really not necessary here. You know, there's a sort of a hypothetical scenario talked about sort of lower in that section regarding a child you know, SA sort of situation in Europe. It's hard for me to, you know, I don't know how seriously we were supposed to take that example, but it's hard to understand how that would require the use of, or DPD to use facial recognition technology in the circumstance that was outlined there. There's, let's see, in the fourth paragraph, it begins, "The downsides of FRT must be balanced against the upsides." You know, and I can understand that folks of a good conscience can differ on this, but for me, there are no upsides to a technology that is discriminatory right out of the gate. You know, it's hard for me to figure out how we legislatively balance for something that we know before we even bring it into the city of Davis, it's going to be discriminatory towards some of the communities that have historically been most harshly discriminated against in the law enforcement system. We discussed it in the subcommittee that comparisons between the city of Davis and the nation's largest municipality, the city of New York, is it's so far afield that it makes it a comparison that we can't even utilize, that can't be utilized for a proper, I think, legislative purpose. The context of Davis policymaking is so different in terms of law enforcement and criminal justice, in terms of the rates of crime, the sources of crime, the weapons, the penalties. Again, that a comparison between the two jurisdictions, particularly for policymaking and law enforcement, just doesn't seem appropriate. Later on here, for someone who is unwilling to allow a single improper detention based on FRT, banning the practice seems reasonable. Yes, I am unwilling to allow one person in Davis to be improperly detained because of this technology. And so, yes, from that perspective, it is very reasonable to ban this technology. Again, if you are, as I am, unwilling to have one Davis resident improperly detained because of this technology. Lastly here, it says, I support an ordinance to fully, study FRT or to consult DPD. It's hard for me to see how that would be a good use of time and money, a study on FRT, again, when there's so much public data available that we've, that Brian has shared with us in our last meeting, that we've taken a look at, that Robert shared with us in a report a couple weeks ago. It's hard for me to understand how that would be a good use of our time and resources as a city. Again, the idea that we must accept the certainty, given what we know about this technology, would be the certainty of wrongful detentions, all for the possibility that this tool might be helpful for crime fighting, is fully inconsistent with my understanding of this commission's values, the council's values, our community's values, and thus it seems fully appropriate, at least from my perspective, this technology be banned in the city of Davis.
May I respond?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Commissioner Munger.
Sure. No, I fully appreciate what you're saying, Dylan. We just disagree. I don't have to criticize your views. As I say in my opposition to your proposal, reasonable minds can differ on this. I think you began by criticizing me for just saying no too quickly to your liking, I guess. But I did say on page 2 of my report, allowing police to use FRT carries risks. Innocent people, particularly people of color, may be misidentified and stopped by police. But I engage in a careful balancing process. And to me, I don't come out the same way you do. We can disagree about that and still respect each other's perspectives. I think the National Academy of Sciences in their report said, quote, FRT can be a powerful aid for law enforcement in criminal and missing person investigations because it enables investigators to generate leads using images captured at a crime scene. A number of law enforcement agencies have reported successful use of FRT to generate otherwise unavailable leads. So to me, I guess I just do the balancing process differently than you do. I'm not willing to risk that child or victim of sexual trafficking where perhaps you are.
Just very quickly, I'm sorry. It's hard for me to understand how I guess the analysis that you've undertaken is a more proper balancing when the balancing is just, we accept the discrimination. We're just going to accept it. It's going to happen. It's okay. And we're just going to accept that because there's a possible hypothetical crime fighting proponent here. That doesn't seem balanced to me, but I don't want to speak over our other committee.
Thank you, Chairman Horton. I support this because I cannot support facial recognition technology when I know without a doubt that it could misidentify people of color, in particular Black men and women, in particular Black children, Black teens. They've been misidentified. and taken into custody. So when we're talking about misidentification or finding children that have been kidnapped, stolen, robbed, we're also talking about children of color being misidentified and taken in. And I'm not willing, I cannot live with that. I cannot live with supporting technology that is going to be biased against people of color. Law enforcement, they have a very challenging job. Yes, they do. And they've done a good job with what they have. And I can support providing them, necessary tools, but just because they may have had success with a couple of things, but there's overly a show of bias with this technology, it's not something I can support. Also, I want to point out that there was a 2020 study out of Harvard that noted that while face recognition algorithms boast high classification accuracy, over 90%, in fact, of those outcomes are not universal. And there was a landmark study called Gender Shades Project. And that approach was applied to appraise 3 gender classification algorithms, including those that were developed by IBM and Microsoft. Those are 2 technology giants, right, that we all trust for the most part. Subjects were grouped into 4 categories: darker-skinned females, darker-skinned males, lighter-skinned females, and lighter-skinned males. All 3 algorithms performed the worst on darker-skinned females, with error rates of up to 34% higher than for lighter-skinned males. That's a challenge. So you're telling me my my fellow commissioner, Chairman Horton, is your skin dark? We're about the same color, but are you going to have a greater chance of being misidentified, or is somebody else going to? I mean, that's just, I can't live with that. I can't live with that. And there was, the study said that as a result, it corroborated an earlier assessment matching capability by the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, in which 28 members of Congress, disproportionately people of color, were incorrectly matched with mugshot images. They were incorrectly matched with mugshot images. And these are members of Congress. So the matching isn't that great. I mean, if it happens to one person, that's wrong. If it happens to many, that's even more wrong. And also, I just want to ask, when did we get to the point where we think that technology is greater than or better than people? I saw a guy here in the audience with blondish brown hair and a red shirt, but maybe the algorithm might say something else. His hair looks a little more red. What I'm saying is human eyes are better than technology, but we have gotten to a point where we think that technology is better than human eyes. I think our police department, I will say, I'm sure that they could use, advancements as they come out and they're appropriate, but they've done a pretty good job, keeping us safe when we've had some instances that were less than good instances in town. And it was with their ID, their eyes, identifying the people. And I just don't think the way it is right now, it is something I support banning facial recognition. I cannot support it, having it. And I think that if we do put a ban on it and the police department finds that, I don't know, say 5 to 10 years from now, there's something that is developed with facial recognition that is so good that maybe 1 out of 10,000 is wrong, and they want to come and present it to council to have them lift that ban, then they can do that. But at this time, I say we need to make sure our civil liberties are protected and the people are protected regardless of their skin color and gender. And that's the other thing too, I want to say. What about LGBTQ community? What about transgender folks? That's just, I'm not comfortable with them being misidentified and potentially taken in for crimes that they did not commit at this time.
Thanks. Just want to make a comment about something you said about eyewitness or identifying people. The literature on eyewitness identification by people is that people aren't very good at identifying people. And so actually machines can be better in many cases. But the problem, I'm glad to
Who
give you-
enters the information?
I'll
or
be
people
glad to
do?
give you some research studies on eyewitness identification, and particularly around criminal justice settings. People aren't very good at identifying, people in those settings. They just aren't. You're biased. We're all biased. We're all very biased. There was, there's lots of evidence that people can't do a very good job of that sort of thing. I will tell you that I'm in favor of banning it for the moment, because I think it's too soon. I think it's a flawed technology at this point. I don't think it's a discriminatory technology. I think the algorithms are discriminatory. I think the training sets are discriminating. And I think and then what happens when it's put into use, then the biases of those training sets and of the algorithms which use the training sets come to the fore, and they make mistakes. This is a decisional process. Part of my job, I'm a psychologist, and I'm interested in how people make judgments and how machines make judgments, actually. So for instance, if you're screening for illnesses, you want a decision-making process that doesn't let through too many false negatives or too many false positives. Unfortunately, at least from my brief reading of the literature on facial recognition technology, those rates are not adequate. You really want to, particularly when you're putting people in detention, you want to be sure you've got the right person, or you're not going to make too much of a, I don't know how to put it, but it's important to be safe. And I think civil liberties outweigh at this point the use of it for criminal identification. So I'm going to say right up front that I'm in favor of, I would like to see this, the proposed ordinance cleaned up a little bit. I've got some language that I pulled from some other city ordinances that I'd be glad to give the subcommittee as part of this. But I don't think it's a technology that's, shall we say, ready for prime time. It needs a lot more work, and there are too many vendors out there, and I worry about profit making and things like that. So that's what I have to say for the moment. And I just want to add it. I do appreciate Commissioner Meyer's points. I think that it has shown some promise, but not enough yet. That's, I guess, what I would say.
May I? Oh, Mary, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
First of all, I really want to thank everybody that's contributed to this discussion, because I think it is a huge decision for our community that has an impact on a lot of our citizens. I look at facial recognition technology as an AI application, and I clearly wish we didn't have some of the AI already out in society that hasn't had time to set up guardrails and protections for the community, but we haven't had that. When I look at a technology, I'm interested in looking at outcomes, and they're really important to assess because every technology has potential for good and bad outcomes. Currently, I believe this particular AI technology is not ready for implementation due to lack of standards and a lack of discrimination against people of color and other minority groups. I think that the National Academy of Sciences, and thank you, John, Engineering and Medicine, has started the process of talking about this technology, facial recognition, and trying to set up those guide rails and some national standards and recommendations for safety. You talked about anecdotes, and most of what we're seeing is all anecdotes, and there are some pros and some cons. I personally think anecdotes are very valuable because they alert society to problems and can start the scientific process to get answers to those problems. But they are anecdotes and not scientific data. I believe technologies continue to evolve, especially if they are going to meet public demands for certain features and certain results. And if we as communities say we aren't going to institute this because it doesn't have these features we need to not only protect our citizenry, but also assist our public safety people, and that both things are concurrent, then I think they're going to need to change because people won't implement them as much. My proposal is to add a time frame to this ban, because I think this is a perfect thing for our PAC. And I'd like to propose 3 years, at which point our group revisits with the concerns we have to look at what the standards are and what has happened. What have we seen as far as protections, and where have we looked at how people have utilized it and what are the outcomes? How many false negatives, false positives? How many crimes have been prevented or people caught? So I'd like that put into this. I have some language I'd like to suggest so that we, again, as a PAC, can be proactive in taking a look at this.
I'm going to ask her, are you saying approve it and in 3 years revisit it?
That there's a time frame, the ban is for 3, 4 years, whatever we decide, at which point I would say there would be a review by PAC to assess if facial recognition technology has had national standards established with safety guardrails, and assess outcomes from established programs to determine if discrimination has decreased and criminal cases have been solved. After this review, the PAC will make a recommendation to either continue the ban or to terminate the ban. And we could work with law enforcement. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. I do want to hear from Don, and then I want to go to public comment.
In almost 7 years I've been on this commission, this is the first time that I can honestly say I wish I wasn't here. This is so difficult. It really is. It is emotional, and I have such high respect for all of you, all of my colleagues on this commission, that I'm having a very, very difficult time dealing with the conflict. Mary, I thank you more than I can say for getting behind the mic before I had to, because I think you have brought a tremendous amount of wisdom into this discussion. It is too personal, and it is too emotional, and we don't have enough information yet to make the kind of decision that we are considering tonight. My first reaction preparing, I spent all day today, by the way, on this topic, and I wasn't satisfied that I had come to a conclusion. I think, John, you made a fantastic piece of research and a great contribution. And I think that you have saved us from making a decision short of all of the consideration that should be taken. The opposite of what you have contributed was Mr. Hoffa's presentation, which frankly I was offended by. I felt that my intelligence was being insulted by a series of anecdotes and a biased view. I did not feel it was useful. In fact, I felt it was destructive. I don't think he was not a scholar, or if he was, he certainly didn't present the results of scholarship in this meeting. So I think we started a few yards behind the line of scrimmage, and now we're trying to catch up. I respect you all, and I've listened carefully to everything going on here. If I had the experiences that you have had, Dylan, or Cecilia, the experiences that you have had, I probably would be 100% with you. I empathize with you completely. I also am a member of a minority group. I'll forego the opportunity for a joke at that point, but I'll just say I take this very, very seriously. And I have the highest respect for your conclusions and your fears. I think your fears are justified. I think Mary's point that this is an immature technology is very, very important. I happen to be a person that follows technology closely. I'm not a scientist myself. I'm not an inventor, but I am a fan. And I follow these things very closely. And I know that this argument is not unlike the argument and the discussions that we've all been having for the past year about artificial intelligence, which is a part of this product. But artificial intelligence generally is something that has a lot of us spinning around and having a hard time getting our heads around. So I would like to suggest that, John, you are right in trying to dissuade us, disassociate ourselves from our fears if we can, and try to look at this unemotionally. But I don't know that it's possible to look at it unemotionally. And it may not even be productive to look at it unemotionally, because if in fact it isn't, if we engage in a program, if we employ a technology in Davis, in our community that is not acceptable to large numbers of, or acceptable to any of our people, if it isn't something that we can all agree on is largely positive and helpful and will be useful to us all, then really we can't do it. But I think you came up with an answer to the problem, in my opinion, Mary, and that is that we recognize that this is coming. It isn't quite at the point, or maybe it's far from the point where we will all feel comfortable with it. Maybe we never will all feel comfortable with it, but maybe it'll grow on us. And maybe we'll have more experience coming from other places, some that are not doing it and will possibly suffer as a result, and others that have jumped into it early and might wish they hadn't. We need more experience and we need more knowledge. So I came tonight thinking that I was just going to listen and then vote against the idea of the ban. But now I really have come around to feeling, like I said at the beginning, I wish I wasn't here. I wish I didn't have to make a decision, but my decision is no decision. I cannot make a decision, and therefore call it the coward's way out, if you will, whatever. But I feel that at this point, we should continue to study it. We can recommend a ban for a reasonable period of time. 3 years seems a little long to me, the way technology goes and the way society is moving, and some of the social problems that we need to deal with. 3 years seems a little long to me, but that's not a major point. I think we should either advise the council to delay altogether, or even better, well, I won't say better. I'd say as an alternative to that, a ban, if we want to call it a ban, pending further study, and come back to this and look at it again. Why can't we look at it again in 1 year? We don't have to make a decision 1 year from now, but we can look at it at that time. Maybe we'll be ready to make a decision. And I hope I'm not implying that I expect the decision will be favorable to the use of the technology. As I said, I came prepared for that tonight, but now that I've listened to all of you, I think that I want to hold a gray position in the middle, 50-50. And study it and investigate it and look for more, not just sit back and wait for time to pass, but really continue to work on this. And maybe a year or a year and a half from now, make a recommendation to the council. Of course, the recommendation now, I guess, that I'm in favor of is that they don't approve of the use of the technology at this time, and just leave it at that. I don't know why we even need to use the word ban, because that's a loaded term, and we don't necessarily have to say that. But you can word it whatever way you like, but I hope I've been somewhat helpful in suggesting that there is possibly a middle road that can be the most productive.
I would just say quickly that ban is just a shorthand for what we're calling the ordinance. I don't think the word ban even appears in the ordinance. But
Okay.
just you had a question?
Yeah, Commissioner Canning, I just wanted to respond to him because he was saying, you know, people make more errors. With regards to technology, who enters the data, who enters the programming, who does the programming? People do. So yes, people do make errors, I know that, but technology is not error-free or less error-free because it's people that do that. That's why we have these cars that people pay thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for, and they're being recalled because there's errors in them. People thought we could have driverless automobiles and be safe. It's not the case. They have a lot of accidents, and there's been a lot of recalls. Last year, there was a 2022 study conducted by institutions, including the Johns Hopkins University and Georgia Institute of Technology. They programmed AI-trained robots to scan blocks with people's faces from different races. So blocks in a community, okay? After the robots were scanned, the faces, they scanned the faces, they were tasked with designating which blocks had more criminals. They consistently labeled the blocks with blacks' faces as criminals. And the University of Calgary interviewed Dr. Gideon Christian. He's an expert with AI and the law. And he said, there is the false notion that technology, unlike humans, is not biased. And that's not accurate. Humans are the ones that program the technology. So I like Mary's idea. You know, I think 3 years, anywhere between 3 to 4 years would be reasonable to come back. Also, I think it's okay to say, yeah, it's not ready right now. I'm not willing to, I mean, would it be the same if it was white males that it was discriminated against? Would we have a line out the door? I mean, we cannot say this is okay for people of color, but it would be different if it was other people. I'm going to be very frank with you. This is not acceptable. I don't want you or other people of color to be misidentified and treated wrongly. And we can also say, we don't approve of it now. If the police department finds that the technology has advanced, they can come to us and make a request to council that they lift the ban and approve of it. That's what happened with the trucks, what is that called? What are those called? The big giant truck that MRAPs, yeah. Everybody spoke up against it and they banned it. And then they came back and said, wait a minute, there's another, it's like an MRAP, but it's smaller. And we looked at it and they said it was safer and more appropriate for a city our size. And they lifted that and they ended up approving it. And our city has one now. It's smaller. It's not like the big military size one. So this is something they've done before. But I'm going to be very frank. I am not comfortable approving. I approve this because I'm not comfortable approving any AI that misidentifies people, mostly based on their ethnicity, the color of their skin, their gender. Thank you.
Okay, I have a lot of comments, but I want to get to public comment. If we can do, I saw your hand, Robert, but can we? Okay, quickly, hopefully.
Yeah, I support Mary's proposal for a 3-year moratorium. There's a good word. I just want to say that 3 years, I don't think there'll be enough evidence, Dawn, in a year to really make any judgments about how much this technology has improved. Data collection takes a long time and reporting is really important.
Well-
So 3 years, I think, is a good number.
Well, perhaps we could have another discussion about
But
this in a year or year.
I'm
and a half
I'm
and
gonna interrupt you guys.
take
I
it
need
in-
for you to take public comment before you continue with your deliberations. You shouldn't be crafting decisions and stating your final positions before you've taken all of the public comment and input. So
I'll welcome our first public commenter.
Hi. Hi. Okay. Hello, my name's Sia Patel. I think a population we haven't heard enough about is the immigrant population regarding FRT. I would like to say that I'm a non-citizen and have been targeted by people who believe that just being born in a different country is a crime. But more on the issues of FRT on the immigrant and non-citizen population. According to the ACLU, this technology can be used to target immigrants through the use of ICE, FBI, and the CPB databases. In 2017, ICE was able to arrest 400 people through just an intelligence system called the Investigated Case Management, which was able to provide ICE agents with background info such as biometric traits and immigration history of potential subjects. So imagine if biometric traits was applied to FRT. As of 2023, a form of FRT called Traveler Verification Service is only required for non-US citizens when they come into the US, which shows how non-citizens are direct targets. However, even Congress has questioned the accuracy of the biometric data used with CPB at airports. We shouldn't allow FRT to harm our community, which is home to so many migrants and non-citizens. FRT is a dangerous tool that just doesn't work to protect our community, but instead target members and allow our community pillars to falter. To conclude, I urge the subcommittee and the commission as a whole to add immigrants and non-citizens to the ordinance. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome to the next commenter.
Hello, I'm Gray Crawford. I am in favor of the ban on facial recognition technology. Saying this as someone who probably fits the bill very well for who facial recognition technology would be able to identify. I am very concerned about people who don't look quite like me. I think that as a community, anyone can agree that we are opposed to the idea of someone being detained even for a few hours falsely because of their sex or their race or their gender or their orientation or their immigration status or any of these other facilities by which facial recognition technology is biased. I think that passing this ban is a great opportunity for this city to commit its values into policy and prevent what would, in my opinion, be a very tragic overreach in police power. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome to the next commenter. We have a slope down to the podium.
I feel like I'm on a boat. Luana Villanueva. I live in Davis for 70 years. Anyway, I'm in favor of the ban as far as misidentifying people. Why haven't they, meaning whoever developed this nonsense, why haven't they worked on it to make it better? I mean, there's all this scientific data saying that it's biased, and yet it's still there. And the police departments all over the country have been trying to get, the public has been trying to get the police departments all over the country to not be biased. And this is going to be a huge step backwards using this. Now, Robert, I'm losing it. I can't remember the other point I wanted to make. Oh, here we go. You'd think that they want to get the right person that's committed the crime behind bars or whatever's going to happen to them. And so they get somebody that's wrong, that's innocent, that, and we're going to have nightmares about. And yet the person committing the crime is out there free. So it would seem to me that this is exactly the wrong thing for any police department to do without doing a whole lot of detective work on top of using this as just one little piece of trying to figure out a crime. So I think that the ban on it is absolutely essential. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the next commenter.
Hello, my name is Samina Usman. I'm the Government Relations Coordinator for Secure Justice. I wanted to tell you about a man in New York who was arrested at his home. He was accused of stealing a pair of socks from a department store. It could not be possible for him to have stolen those socks because he was at the hospital awaiting the birth of his child. So facial recognition is responsible for this false positive. And there are many false positives, especially against Asian and African-American people. A Washington Post article said that Asian and African-American people were up to 100 times more likely to be misidentified than white men. And it just depends on the algorithm. And also Native Americans had the highest false positive rate of all ethnicities, according to the study. And faces of African-American women were falsely identified often more times than other kinds of searches. I read a study that 38% of African-American women were falsely identified. And there are many reasons why there are concerns for facial recognition technology. There's potential for fraud. There's potential of hackers to be breaking into the databases. It could be used to monitor children, or it's insufficiently regulated. And it's not just monitoring the face, it's monitoring, lots of other things that can impact hiring decisions or, tracking productivity. And your private life is no longer private. So even if it's 100% accurate, it violates one's right to privacy. And so that's very much concerning. And so, there's lots of other reasons. There's not enough transparency. So again, I urge you to ban this technology because there are lots more concerns besides it having false information. It's also about one's right to privacy. And so again, I encourage you not to support adopting or acquiring any facial recognition technologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the next commenter.
Oh. My name is Sam Hopwood. I'm a student at UC Davis. I think if you've got the students to participate in local government, clearly something is quite important. And as just a very brief aside, I'm here to support in favor of the ban on facial recognition technology in Davis. For a man like me, facial recognition technology, a light-skinned man, has an error rate of less than 1%. Now, if I was a dark-skinned woman, that rate rises to 34.7%. Now, if I'm a member of the community in Davis who is of dark skin or is a woman or otherwise, who already faces immense repression and danger from police, has a higher rate of being a victim of police violence, has a higher rate of being inappropriately identified for a crime, if I am then seeing a situation where facial recognition technology is being introduced in a way that could compound my stresses, compound the error in American policing, I will obviously feel a great wound at that fact. And I think there's something to be said about the necessity and proportionality of the use of FRT. Now, some cities where there is much more crime than here in Davis, such as San Francisco, Boston, Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine, where one could say that the crime is so great that facial recognition technology could vaguely be seen as necessary. These are already cities that have gone and banned the use of facial recognition technology. And while I understand there are some odd cases where such technology could prove an ethical use, the rate of crime and the depth of crime, the scale of crime here in Davis is not nearly as high as it is in San Francisco or Boston or Portland, Maine or Portland, Oregon. And so my question is such a use of technology proportional or necessary? I think it isn't. I think allowing for its use will unnecessarily endanger many vulnerable members of our community. And it's for that reason that I would be very much in favor of a ban of the technology in Davis. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the next commenter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Evan Wallace. I'm a student at UC Davis. So I think we can all agree at this point, I hope we all agree, that it's a fact that facial recognition technology is biased towards certain minority groups. And this could lead to the disproportionate targeting of these groups of people like Black women, Black men, gender nonconforming folks, increasing the likelihood of wrongful suspicion of them. So in my opinion, in my estimation, this risks undermining the classical liberal requirement that governments treat all people equally under the law. And this is enshrined in the 14th Amendment. No state shall deny any persons within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. And so I feel that using an inherently biased tool in policing violates this principle. And so because of this, in my opinion, banning FRT is a critical step in preventing the infringements of civil rights of people in Davis. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the next commenter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie again, community member of Davis. I'm against the use of facial recognition technology. Aside from it being biased, honestly, I don't want my data to be collected or that of any person that looks like me. The way that facial recognition technology works, like was mentioned before, was that it goes through a specific data training set. And honestly, I don't want data from myself, my face, to be used, especially without my consent or access to that data afterwards. And those are my main concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the next commenter.
Good evening, Commissioner. My name remains Francesca Wright. And I want to thank all the members of the committee for their work on developing a document that we could be discussing around this really important issue that touches both on discrimination and privacy rights. The committee memo does not disclose what interviews and research was done, what the sourcing data were, why certain language was selected in the ordinance. And when I read the dissent, I realized some of it could be taken care of with some language cleanup, as Robert had mentioned. I appreciate Commissioner Myers posing his concerns in writing, as it elevates the concerns for thoughtful discussion and identifies some room for improvement in a few specific clauses. He raises an issue that I often raise, and that's the lack of empirical data in the field of public safety. We have the Food and Drug Administration. We have incredible rigor around public health, and we do not have that rigor around public safety. And you're in the crosshairs of this. It's a lack, but you're also at the vanguard of this. You're one of few commissions with an independent police auditor as a resource person who has access to the department. What you are in a position to add to the body of knowledge. Some of the arguments for FRT, when I read them, lack rigor as well. For example, the NYC's generation of possible matches for murder, rape, assault, and robberies doesn't mean that they were found guilty. It means that they were probably imprisoned. They were separated from their families. They may have lost their jobs. Their children were ashamed of going to school. The disruption of a family. I have accompanied families to court, families of innocent people, and the pain and disruption and trauma that those families go through cannot be understated. We don't have the analysis, or I couldn't find it, and maybe some people here did better research than I did. I only Google scholared for half a day. On the false positives that occurred in that New York City's report. But I also found it was interesting that there were a couple cases where FRT, as inaccurate as it remains, may be helpful particularly to identify a person who is incapacitated to communicate or deceased persons. But of course, that would be under the jurisdiction of the county coroner, not Davis Police. Just like most people who've spoken, my greatest concern regarding use of FRT is this documented disproportionate inaccuracy with groups already overrepresented in databases and policing, and that's people of color and gender nonconforming people. These groups live with daily trauma in our culture. And to increase suspicion based on faulty algorithms worsens their safety. And for this reason alone, I urge the commission to keep working toward banning broad unlimited use of FRT. As I said previously, our small municipality takes data seriously and is in a position to contribute data and analysis. We should be working with Michael Janacco on this. We should be asking his input on the ordinance in case there is some language that could be make it improve the language. Given that am I at time?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just get my conclusion. So anyway, I see an opportunity for the ordinance language to be modified. I would suggest as a former program evaluator to look at a 5-year period because that would give you a larger data set, especially when you're dealing with small numbers as we are in the city of Davis. And that if there is any exceptions, that they be very narrow and very specific. And the ordinance, I suggest an additional clause to include reporting on use, demographics of suspects and convictions if there is any specific exceptions to the ban. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the next commenter.
I'd like to implore the council to consider, after observing the debate tonight, to move forward with courage for those who said that they preferred more time to research this technology. As we've all seen collectively, this technology just doesn't work. And to the people whose lives will be daily affected by this technology, I encourage all of you to go forward with courage in your hearts and ban this immediately or as fast as you can. We all know that government works rather slowly, but as fast as you can so that our city is not a city where people of color have to walk down the street looking up at every camera and having their blood pressure spike through the roof. I have high blood pressure, and let me tell you, it's not fun. So in all seriousness, I implore everyone here to take empathy and courage and direct action and ban this as fast as you can. To those saying, well, maybe we'll go back to the drawing board after 5 or 10 years. I would argue it's better to ban it now and dust your hands off and redirect government resources to other problems that will present themselves in the near future. Once you've placed a ban, you can maybe go back and update it every 5 to 10 years to keep up with the technology. But once the ban is in place, you'll have peace of mind to know that your citizens will not have to, or at least some of your citizens will not have to live with that daily fear, at least in the city of Davis.
Thank you. Welcome to the next commenter.
Thank you, Chair. I believe my name has still stayed the same as well. Brian Hofer, Executive Director of Secure Justice. I'm going to say how much I appreciate these questions, these discussions, and just take a moment to recognize our privilege, right? We could be in North Korea, Iran. Why do we have this privilege? Because it started with the right to privacy, the right to even form these thoughts, to take positions, to advocate to change our government. This is exactly why people are concerned about technologies like facial recognition. Chair, I want to appreciate the line you drew that if the tech is inappropriate for Davis, it's inappropriate to outsource your dirty work to others. That is a position I agree with. I do want to say, though, that both you and Commissioner Myers are wrong on one point, which is important. I don't know if it'll flip your vote, Commissioner Myers, but go back up. Right there, the bottom. So if you see the bottom of that paragraph, so it's only illegal to outsource if it's intentional. Okay, I'm the guy that gets to sit in a meeting with the POA during meet and confer while they throw rocks at me. It is never my intention to write anything that hangs people out, that gets them in trouble when they didn't even know they were in trouble. So in the bottom of this says it is not a violation if you do not request or solicit or blah, 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 okay? In practice, Davis is going to say, we've got a suspect, they'll issue a BOLO, be on the lookout. Now, if the FBI on its own uses FRT to identify that somebody and then just sends back a name to Davis and they use that, that's not a violation. They can act on that. Now, if Davis is trying to be sneaky and get around a prohibition and say, go do my dirty work for me, wink, wink, that would be a violation. I do believe there was a question earlier too about liability. You know, your surveillance ordinance has had the exact same private right of action and attorney's fees provision since 2018. There's 20 plus of those ordinances in the country. There's only been 3 lawsuits. On the facial recognition ordinances, there's also about 0 lawsuits because they've been preemptive. You're going in and saying, taking a position first before there's use. So there hasn't been a rush to litigation. On the sort of eyewitness thing, just a comment, a third perspective I'll add. In every single proven false arrest, the technology has failed and there's been a human failsafe involved in the chain. Detroit and New York are the 2 biggest abusers, and they always love to tell me and others, hey, we've got a human failsafe, no harm will happen. They're 90% of all the false arrests. And finally, you know, I appreciate, you know, especially a number of the questions, you know, you as well, Commissioner Bliss, saying, you know, AI, we just kind of release it out into the wild and figure out if it'll work. And I understand certainly a moratorium or a sunset provision, and I'll just toss this out there. I'm not advocating for you to do, you know, as an activist, I obviously have strong opinions. As a commissioner, I try to stay out of other people's votes. So I appreciate that you would want to, you know, periodically review anything. There's no legal obligation to put a moratorium date in your document. If you passed it today, you could review it tomorrow. You can review it next month. You don't need to do that. You could also just put it in your motion. The police commission will revisit this and, you know, whatever. Just keep in mind, this has to go to meet and confer. Between legal review, meet and confer, you know, maybe a public safety committee, future city council, you're going to lose a year of your 3-year review period right there with no data to help you guys make it a decision next time. So just maybe keep those practical considerations in mind. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing that most of the folks in the audience have spoken on this item, I will assume not and take it back to the commission. Just a couple of things. Well, since Brian ended on the sunset, I'll say that I'm not policy wise opposed to a sunset. I just don't know. I think Francesca was the one who suggested 5. I don't know if 3 is the right amount of years, but I'm not opposed. I just want to respond to the suggestion of a sunset. But I also agree with some of the things that Brian just brought up. You don't necessarily have to legislate a sunset to reconsider something that, you know, the city has passed before. So I just want to put that out there. I think if we do move forward on the sunset, I think it perhaps should be slightly longer than 3 years. I heard someone, I think she's gone now, but Sia brought up adding immigrants to the ordinance as a targeted population. I think that makes sense if that is agreeable to colleagues. Robert, you mentioned some language that you wanted to add. Of course, you know, we would see this in a committee process, but I'm just interested substantively as to what some of those things are. If you could maybe 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah, I thought the whereases could use some work. So I've actually got a couple from City of San Francisco's ordinance, which are more general, but basically get to the gist of it. I'll send them to you. Also, I think the point about inadvertent or unintentional receipt, access of, or use of any information obtained from FRT shall not be a violation. That's, I think, I think that came from Oakland's ordinance. And I can pass that on to you because that would be good to have. And I just maybe as a point, the first number that came to my mind was actually 5 years rather than 3, but Mary brought up 3 and I thought that was a good compromise. I also worry about police getting bad information from other agencies. So I think that we should That's why I think that not allowing the agency to get information from, faulty sources is important. Of course, they get information from sources all the time, and I'm not sure they vet all of them all the time. So anyway.
Thank you. Commissioner Sherman, you mentioned, wanting, or feeling that we didn't have enough information to make this decision this evening. Number one, it seems like we have some drafting things that need to get worked on in terms of this possible recommendation. But I guess this is maybe not an answerable question in this context, but like, what information are you looking for more? Maybe it's the fact that I've seen a whole lot of things outside of this meeting. And so I'm in my mind, I'm like, well, we've got all the data that's out there, but what are you looking for?
Well, I'd like to see more experience from other places. I'd like to see opinions from that are well, we have plenty of opinions. I think what I would like to see is more data, frankly. But this is a soft science to begin with. You made an excellent point, Robert, earlier about eyewitness identification and how much has been learned in recent years about the inaccuracy of eyewitness, and not where people are lying or trying to intimidate or to hurt an innocent person. People who honestly, in their mind and in their heart, think that the man sitting across from them that they're pointing at, that's the one they saw. And very often, much too often, it turns out to be wrong. And you wouldn't certainly accept that as a routine result. But somehow we seem to have come around to a point where as soon as the issue of discrimination or unfair treatment of certain groups or unequal treatment under the law and so forth, as soon as those issues come in, we all become emotional. And I think we become frightened, and justifiably, because historically we've learned and in our own lives we've witnessed tremendous injustices. But some of it comes from people who are trying to do the right thing and are saying, are identifying a suspect to the best of their ability to do so, but they're wrong. And if we're going to expect facial recognition to be perfect, we will never be able to use it. And yet it might be useful. It might be more accurate than other ways we have. It might be a tool among many that detectives are able to use in finding suspects for crimes. So I'm bothered by the color that is an emotion that is introduced to the issue when we concentrate on the misuse, and that's why I applaud the point that all identification methods of suspect are imperfect. Maybe suspect isn't the word, but imperfect. But this could be it could be another useful tool as it's developed, and eventually we may all be able to agree that we have controlled it to a point where we can depend upon it.
So just to clarify, if we can provide some information, perhaps at the next meeting or via the subcommittee can provide to the full commission, information from jurisdictions who are currently utilizing this technology and perhaps some of the dynamics present in utilizing that technology. That's what you're looking for?
Yeah,
okay.
Of course.
Okay.
I hope you recognize me as an open-minded person. I am absolutely open to that. That's the point. That's why I am opposed to an outright ban, and I am looking for a period of time that we can continue to study and become more knowledgeable about it and develop a wise decision.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to be as clear as possible because, yeah, I think as I suggested earlier, all of us have a different level of information that we have on this topic.
Right.
And as I don't know, Senator, been leading the charge on this particular issue, I have a whole lot swimming in my head, and it's perhaps possible that not all that's made it to the full commission. So we'll definitely look to bring some of that information from some of those other jurisdictions back to our next meeting. I did just want to, offer hopefully some gentle and respectful pushback on the idea of there being an emotional dynamic to this discussion, particularly for those of us who are, sort of in some of the target populations. Because I think sometimes when we talk about the presence of emotion in these analytical policy development conversations, it's and I don't want to suggest that this is what you were doing just now, but it's sometimes brought up to suggest that there's less validity. And I'm again not saying that this is what you were saying just now, but there's somehow less validity to some of those things that are being brought up. And I don't know, I don't want to speak for Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald, but my concern on this, doesn't really come from a personal fear, but it comes from a understanding of where I think this community's values are on this kind of subject, and where the technology is, and that doesn't seem consistent right now. So I hear what you're saying in terms of wanting to sort of separate perhaps some of the emotion from the conversation, but I think there might be less emotion present in the conversation than you might be picking up on. I
don't know
offer
really
that
how to answer that.
I offer that in terms of my perspective.
It's an
Yeah, I don't-
unanswerable
right.
question.
Yeah, it's not really a question. It's just what I'm sharing in terms of I don't know if I see it in the exact same way that you had, Robert.
We
Oh,
all,
go ahead.
Dylan, we all seek justice. I think we can grant that to one another. We all seek justice, and we all want to obtain and maintain justice within a framework that permits the police department and all of the various other services that feed to them and from them and contribute to public safety. We won't deny, we don't want to deny them the tools, but we at the same time have to protect our values. That word has been thrown around tonight, and I think it's a good one. There are also political considerations. What will the community accept? What will the community be comfortable with? It isn't enough to be right. If we were all clairvoyant and could ever be confident that we're all right, there still would be people who would be uncomfortable with what we decided. You can't remove the emotion from this. It's there, and we have to deal with it. But if we were to vote for the ban and put it in terms of we don't want the city council now or ever to employ this technology, we would be, I don't think we would be faithful to our purpose, which is to serve a variety of contributors to the public good.
I look forward to us looking at that information at the next meeting about what some of the other jurisdictions have been going through. Robert? Oh, yes.
So where are we in terms of the motion? I just emailed you some language, not the motion, the
ordinance.
Proposed ordinance.
Yes. So at this point, we have it before us for consideration. What it seems like or at least I'm going to assume is the political will of the commission, is that the commission the committee do some more looking at this issue, consider the language edits that you have just sent over, consider this sunset or reconsideration topic, the addition of adding immigrants as a target group, that there's some things that need to be worked out at the committee stage, and I feel like that we would return back at our next meeting to present you with the results of whatever that work is.
So, Commissioner Canning, whatever information you just sent to Dylan,
Oh.
can you please send it? Or so that I could include it as part of the minutes and the public
You
conversation.
said
I
send
will-
it to me. I thought it was.
Forward it to you right now.
Thank you.
Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think as a subcommittee, we should also, reach out to Mr. Chinalco. He's been very helpful to us in the past. And so please expect our call, email opportunity to communicate with you either in person or via Zoom, if that's okay with you.
And I'm just seeing his hand is raised, so I don't know if you have a contribution, Mike.
And-
If so, please take it
Oh,
away.
let me,
Oh,
I'm not done. And also I wanted to say, this is very emotional and it should be. We're talking about not just in Davis, there was a Black man years ago who was mowing his lawn. He was mowing his lawn, just like many other people do when we do gardening, mowing. And he was approached by an officer. Can't remember if he was taken in or not, but he was questioned as to whether and why he was mowing his lawn at his home. That's not okay. That is not okay. Ever. In Davis, in New York, Chico, I don't care where. That's never okay. So it is very emotional, very emotional. And I know we're all, for justice and fairness, all of us, regardless of our differences on issues, we all serve on this commission for a reason. But as stated before, this right now is not a good opportunity or a good time rather for facial recognition technology. And in 5 years, we might find it's still not a good time. We might find in 10 or 20 years, it's still not a good time. Just like slavery was never a good thing. I'm serious. So, we need to be open to that it's just, I'm open to, revisiting it in 5 years. But as I mentioned before, just like with the MRAP, they wanted a big old machine and they brought it back and said, what about a little one? After that particular commission said, no, we don't want the MRAP. So the police know how to do that. They have funds. They know how to come back and talk to council and ask them to revisit issues. So it's okay if we say we want a ban or let's revisit in 5 years. They know how to ask that. Thank you so much.
Mike.
Commissioner Horton, I appreciate it. And thank you, Commissioner Escamilla Griswold, and be happy to talk offline with the committee if that is the intent of the commission. I'm not going to get into the substance much, but I always, when I'm considering whether or not to advance a certain policy, ordinance, or proposal, I always worry about unanticipated consequences. And the only point that I will make this evening is that, I think the commission ought to be looking at unanticipated consequences as well. And that's what I'll be advising the committee. And what I'm talking about really is police departments do a lot of things. Their primary responsibility, or one of them, is to identify bad guys and arrest them. But that's not all they do. And this has been brought up in some of the literature, in some of the discussion today, but I think it ought to be focus a little bit more on that. So other things that DPD would do and police agencies do throughout the country are things like rescue victims of human trafficking, rescue victims of kidnapping, and identify or locate individuals who are missing for one reason or another, perhaps because they no longer have the wherewithal to take care of themselves. In those cases, I don't see that there is the downside of using facial recognition technology in that capacity, because even if you end up being wrong, there's no consequence for the individual other than an encounter with the officer. There's not going to be a detention. There's not going to be an arrest. And so all of the consequences that are of deep concern by many of you, and I share some of those, don't exist in some of the other responsibilities that DPD has, as with any other law enforcement agency. So it's just something to consider, that there's a lot more nuance to this with regard to a consequence that you may not anticipate with regard to any proposed ordinance that you consider. And that's why I think offline it would be helpful to have a conversation on some of those unanticipated consequences. But I really appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you all have brought to the dais today.
Thank you, Mike. Robert, did you have, okay. Any other comments from the commission? Oh, yes, Mayor.
I just wanted to address the sunset piece once again. It's been brought up that, yes, the police department can come anytime, and yes, the city council can request it anytime. For me, by putting the sunset in with the statement that we would be the group doing this review, brings it so that we can be proactive. Somehow things get lost in the shuffle and these policies go somewhere, and it would clarify our role in any future looking at it. So that's where I would like you guys to consider that aspect, whether it's 3 or 5 or 4. I think 1 is too quick. But I really think it is a big role for us, and it is a way to stay proactive on this, in this field.
Thank you, Mary. Always keeping us on track. Any other comments from the commission on this? All right. I appreciate everyone's contributions there. We'll go ahead and move on to, I don't really even know where we are. I'm sorry, actually, we need to go ahead and make a motion to extend since we're past our allotted time. Does any, I'll go ahead and make a motion for 10 minutes, very ambitiously. All right, till 9 o'clock. A little bit more than that. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All, any opposed? Okay. All right, subcommittee liaison updates. Any, oh goodness. Obviously there were no updates on subcommittee item A. I just, if folks who are paying, thank you, Brian, and our folks at Secure Justice. For folks who are paying attention to the agenda packet, Commissioner Myers had a memo that he, I draw that to your attention if you didn't read it. I'll just forward this into a conversation at the next meeting. I do have some concerns there, but we'll talk about that at a future meeting if possible. Outreach. I'm sorry. Did you have?
What? Oh, you're commenting on Commissioner.
Yes. This document. So yes, unless anyone else has anything on that, I want to go ahead and I thought we were actually scrapping the outreach subcommittee update. Kelly? No?
It wasn't the outreach subcommittee. It was 2 other subcommittees.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yeah. So yeah, this is our general outreach subcommittee. Seeing as I'm on it, I would assume that it did not meet in the past month. Subcommittee on hiring, we did hear an update from Mike on that. Any further questions or comments? Thank you, Francesca. Any other comments or questions on the hiring audit? Okay.
Only that,
oh, yeah.
I look forward to hearing about it next month.
Any public comment on all 3 of our subcommittee items? All right, we'll take it back to the commission. Any further comments? All right, long range calendar, anything that we need to put on a future agenda item, colleagues? Okay, cool. Any public comment on long range? We didn't even need that all that time. Taking it back to the commission. A motion for adjournment. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Not all.
Bye, Mike. Thank you.